we are right now in the midst of the struggle against Nazism, fascism, Zionism. And they are showing their true face to the world. It is for the world to see. And if it wasn't clear enough, it has become very clear over the past couple of years when Israel has exposed its true face to the world. And there's no going back from there. I'm currently based in Munich, Germany. And I've also lived in the past in Germany. And looking at German society today, which I see as the most obedient and worshipping of authority of societies that I have ever come across, looking at the way that the society is today, I can definitely see how Nazism came into being in Germany. Now, I don't think that Nazism is a German phenomena, it's a universal phenomena. It's a human phenomena of the worst kind. And it is now playing out among Israeli society. They have become full-on Nazis. That's the only way to describe them. Now, we have to understand kind of the type of mentality that is there. And as you mentioned, not all the Nazis were monstrous to their fellow beings, at least the ones that they didn't treat as the Untermensch. The ones that they didn't treat as the subhumans, but there were some people that they did treat as fellow human beings. And the same is also true to Israelis. The difference is that while the Nazis were doing all those atrocities behind closed doors, more or less, and were not bragging about it, and when they went home, their children didn't necessarily know what they were up to when they were carrying out these atrocities. This is not the case in Israel. Israeli society, the society, not only the government, the society is full-on Nazi, and they are actually taking pride in that. In the past, I used to say that I come from a totally fascist state. Nowadays, I can say that I come from a totally Nazi state. And being a dissident is a very kind of weird situation to be in, but it is being so different from basically the entirety from the rest of society. But I say that to understand that this is a psychological phenomena that is happening there. It's not just about what they do and what they believe in. It is a type of psyche that they are in. And usually when I talk about Zionism, I say that the easiest way to explain Zionism is as a cult. And it all revolves about us and them. And if you are not part of us, you are the enemy. You are something that we have to fight against.
When you say that, it sounds like, I mean, now they are displaying in TikTok videos or straight out saying genocidal statements from governments, from high-ranking officers or whatever. But the idea we have of Israel is not like with Zionism and everything, it's not that it was like that always. But when you say now that it's full-on Nazi and we go back to a few of the first Zionists, what were they then?
Among Zionists, I know of two types, and only two types. One are the honest Zionists, the ones who are racist and proud of it. And you mentioned that the early Zionists, some of them were very, very racist and proud of it. And some of them were even promoting eugenics. Long before the Nazis did, they were actually even gave inspiration in a way when someone like Otto Upin, who was a key figure among the Zionist movement, and he was all about eugenics, and he made different types of categories among Jews. He created. He claimed that there were 7 different categories among Jews, obviously the Ashkenazi, white Ashkenazi at the top, and then you have all kinds of others at the bottom. And he made these categories based on skull shape and nose size and things like that. Just to explain, at the same time that you have the honest Zionists, the ones who are racist and proud of it, the ones who are unashamed about their racism, there is another form of Zionism, which is just as racist, just as supremacist, but uses a whole other discourse, a whole other narrative to justify its racism. So they like to come across as liberal, progressive, even supportive of human rights, but at the same time, they're just as racist. This type of Zionism, which has been active for many, many years and which has been able to sell Israel to the rest of the world as being somehow a legitimate, a normal entity because of their effective discourse, this effective form of propaganda that they were promoting to the rest of the world. This, because of the ongoing genocide, has basically, there's a serious crack in this type of propaganda. And now we are seeing, and if you look at the news and what is happening within Israel, you see how the honest Zionists are becoming much more vocal, much more prevalent in the daily discourse. And with them, what you see is what you get. It's very clear. Just like with Arthur Rupin at the time, what you see is what you get. Zionism, unlike Judaism, okay, has kind of tried to create something else that doesn't exist in Judaism. So Judaism is a religion and nothing else.
Anti-nationalist, I would say.
Yes.
Judaism
Yes.
is, no?
There is no concept of nationalism
No.
in Judaism. Nationalism is a relatively recent phenomenon. So there was never a concept of nationalism in Judaism. And also the issue of the land of Israel, for example, what makes that place important or holy? The religious practice that is being practiced there. But within Judaism itself, there are statements like, the land is but God's alone, and things like that. Or when people claim, oh, it is our God-given right to the land, then actually within Judaism you have these clear statements saying that if you have sinned, committed sinful acts and war and so on, then you forfeited the right to the land. Okay, then you cannot expect to have, there is no right that is inherent to someone just because they are of this or that background. What Judaism, the way that Judaism looks at the land, unlike Zionism, is that what makes that place important, what makes that place holy is the religious practice that is practiced there. What is being practiced now is the exact opposite of anything that Judaism ever talked about. So the Zionists who were not religious, they were anti-religious. The Zionists early on, like Herzl and Rupin and all the others, they were totally against the religious Jews of Europe. They absolutely hated, they loathed the religious Jews. They were saying the most racist things about them, that they were like rats, that they were carrying disease, that they were backward. They didn't want to be like them. They wanted to be like the rest of European society.
They wanted to be like the European elite society.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
They wanted to be like the rest of the European elite. But that European elite didn't want them because they were still treated as somehow Jewish and somehow inferior, because there was real anti-Semitism around. Yes, that is true. So what did the Zionists say? The Zionists initially, by the way, Herzl in his early writings, he said, let us all solve what he called the Jewish problem by mass conversion to Christianity. Let us all go to the cathedral on a Sunday when the bells are ringing, these are his words, and mass convert to Christianity, and problem solved. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to convince his fellow Zionists. So when this didn't work out, he realized that he will not be able to become part of the rest of society in Vienna, where he was living. He will not, because he is somehow, because of anti-Semitism, because he is somehow being regarded as similar to those religious Jews that he hated so much. So he said, okay, so in that case, we must be different, we must be special, and we can never be part of this society. And therefore, we have to pack our bags and go to another place which will be for us and only for us. And this is the concept of Zionism, basically. Now, because these Zionists, they were not religious, but they were still treated as Jewish in one way or another. So what makes them quote-unquote Jewish? Not the religion. So they built this whole idea that revolves not around Jewish religion, but around what they created, what they call as Jewish nationalism and Jewish identity and Jewish whatever that is not about religion, but everything else. So the whole made-up notion of Jewish nationalism is Zionism, basically. But it has nothing to do with Judaism.
But they had problems with bringing Jewish people to Palestine, I think, before the Holocaust, basically. The Jews didn't want to go there. There wasn't a big thing of becoming a Zionist, and most Jewish people in Europe were against Zionism, what I've read.
Exactly. So, first of all, yes, there was strong cooperation between the Zionists and the Nazi regime at the time. But even going back before that, going back to the Balfour Declaration of 1917,
yeah.
Lord Balfour, who was a well-known anti-Semite, for that reason, he decided to give away Palestine to those Zionists, or at least part of Palestine. But even that well-known anti-Semite, Balfour, in the Balfour Declaration, it says that that land, part of it, will be created for a quote-unquote Jewish state, which is not a Jewish state, it's a Zionist state. But even that acknowledged that the people of that land will have to share the land.
Yeah.
And that goes against the thinking of Zionism. We have to remember that when we talk about Zionism later. Now, later on, first of all, Zionism was never a big success story among European Jews until, as you mentioned, until World War II. Less than 5% of European Jews, and pretty much none of the other Jews, let's say the Arab Jews, for example, Jews in Arab countries, but less than 5% of European Jews supported Zionism at the time. The Bund movement, for example, the socialist workers movement among Jews in Eastern Europe was much more popular. And everyone acknowledged that there is anti-Semitism, but unlike the Zionists who said, okay, our way to deal with anti-Semitism is to pack our bags and leave because we can never be part of this society. This is a very racist notion. And obviously the Jews who were living in Europe for generations, they wanted to be part of that society. They didn't want to pack their bags and leave, and they treated Zionism as a threat to their well-being.
Yeah.
I can give you another example, by the way. The leader of the Jewish community in Britain, in London, Lucian Wolff, he wrote a letter to the Rothschild. And in this letter he says it is bad enough when the anti-Semites come and tell us that we have no place in this land and we will never have a place here. And it is even worse when it comes from the Zionists. So he understood, as a British Jew, that the Zionists were a danger to the well-being of that community there. So Zionism was not a big success story. It obviously got a lot of backwind when World War II came into being. For example, there was this guy Stephen Wise in the US who was very well connected to the elite and to the political elite, and he was acting to block boats of Jewish immigrants from reaching the shores of the US. He was active in blocking many attempts, even blocking attempts to aid the Jewish ghettos in Europe, because the Zionists, which he was, the Zionists were not interested in wasting their resources just in order to save Jews, or just in order to have these Jews flee and find some other place of refuge outside of Palestine. That was a waste of resources as far as they were concerned. They were only concerned with putting their resources in getting the healthy, the wealthy, the ones who were politically aligned with them.
The best Jews.
Yes, the best. And these specific, select few, they wanted them to arrive in Palestine. That's the only thing that they were concerned about. And for that purpose, they also collaborated with the Nazis. Actually, they initiated this collaboration while it was during the height of the Nazi era, when global Jewry, and especially American Jews, were boycotting Nazi Germany for what they were doing to their fellow Jews there in Europe. And there was a successful campaign of boycotting Nazi Germany. The the Zionist Federation in Germany approached the Nazis to offer collaboration. And basically what this ended with, basically culminated in the Hava agreement, where the transfer agreement, where basically the Zionist Federation decided to break the boycott, the successful boycott against Nazi Germany. And there is actually this agreement where German Jews will give quite a lot of money to the to the Nazi bank, to the Templar Bank, and they will be allowed to basically get immigration to Palestine, and they will receive some of those funds in the form of German goods. So they were actively breaking the boycott of American and global Jewry against Nazi Germany, and basically funding the war efforts of Nazi Germany with their own money, and getting back the equivalent, more or less, in German goods. So also supporting German industry. Now, there were a few people who went to Palestine, Nazis who went to Palestine. One of them was also Adolf Eichmann, who was later, many years later, after he was part of basically the architect of the final solution, many years later he was eventually tried in Israel and hanged. But much earlier, and at that time he was still talking about that. At the time when he arrived in Palestine, he was very impressed by the Zionists, and he said, if I would have been a Jew, I would have been an ardent Zionist.
Yeah. I think also there's a lot of these, the story is not quite what we thought, but that's the same thing if we go into Churchill. I would call him a Zionist. I mean, what was it that he said? He said something like, I will never apologize for the Jews taking over, overtaking for the Arabs. I will never excuse that the whites took over for the Redskins Indians. I will never excuse that the whites took over the blacks in Australia. It's natural for a superior race to rule over another. That's one of his quotes. I mean,
and that tells you, and that is exactly the motto of Zionism.